Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you who have joined. Thank you for joining us. I'm Tony Joy from Sound Particles. Welcome to this webinar brought to you with help from our friends at Production Expert. And today we have the absolute pleasure and honor of inviting or having someone so amazing, so multi-talented instrumentalist, someone who has invented the unique instrument bass Veena, musician, composer, amazing mix engineer, pioneer in spatial mixing, and now pioneer in also composing in spatial. Justin Gray. Justin, welcome. Justin is a Juno Award winning and a Grammy nominated composer and artist. Thank you for joining us today, Justin.
Thank you so much, Tony, and to everyone who's here. It's just such a pleasure. I love these tools, but I think as we discussed, we'll explore some of the tools that we used from Sound Particles, but also just the concept of spatial music as a whole.
Absolutely. Before you hand it over to you, just want to remind everyone, if you can, pretty please put headphones on. We are streaming in binaural, and with the gods of internet and Zoom working well, you should also be able to experience some spatial magic while just shows us the behind the scenes of Immersed. So just so everyone knows, probably from the invite already, we will be looking at Justin's cutting edge musical experience called Immersed, which again Justin will explain in detail. This is a piece of music or an album that was composed from the ground up in spatial. We will be discussing workflows, methodologies that Justin used when creating, composing, mixing this whole album. That's the agenda today. Of course, this is brought to you by Sound Particles and Production Expert, but this webinar is all about music, all about spatial audio. With that, Justin, I will let you take over.
Thank you. Thanks, Tony. So just as a primer before kind of getting Pro Tools up, and we'll make sure everyone's got audio working. You won't need to do anything. Hopefully you're just all experiencing stereo when we get there, which will be the binaural feed from the renderer. This project, Immersed, kind of goes back to why I got into spatial mixing in the first place. Is as a composer, I think I've always been very, very fond of music in surround, and I mean surround in that prior to immersive audio. I love film. In fact, one of the first people I ever asked a question about Atmos 2 is on this group here, is Alan Salabank. Uh, you know, I learned about spatial audio and the concept of immersive audio and surround before it through the film world. And I've always had a great appreciation for going to the theater, to listening to any opportunity that I could. And I think deep down, what led me to eventually outfit my studio in such a way was that I've just wanted to make music that way. And so this project started compositionally about 4 years ago, but I feel like it's something that's kind of been bubbling for the last decade of just wanting to really find a way to use the technology, use spatial audio technology to create music, to have that be a part of the immersive, to have it be a part of the creative experience. I think probably lots of folks here on this group, I won't be able to count them all, but the amount of us that are doing what I refer to as spatial remixing, which would be the idea that we get tracks, whether they be mono, stereo, 5.1, and then reimagine it in a spatial immersive capacity. Obviously, Dolby Atmos being the format that's become very popular, but there's lots of different formats. The concept of spatial remixing has been a part of my career now for the last 8 years, and I love it. I like reimagining music, other people's music in 3 dimensions. I think it can come out really, really special. But through that process of doing that so many times, I've mixed thousands of songs in the Atmos format and the Sony 360 format at this point. Um, I think we all know that sometimes we reach those limitations where the arrangement itself or the song itself or the deliverables themselves can lead us to a limitation that otherwise I just wish I could go back to the composer and say, hey, what about this? Or even if it's not the composer, can we go back to the recording engineer and say, hey, can we capture it in this way? Because the problem that I'm having of moving this mono image or this stereo image around the space is that it doesn't have 3 dimensional depth built into it. And so once the music was composed, or at least, composed enough to go to the studio, really, like, I'm going to share a screen here before any of the technology begins, but you should all now kind of see Pro Tools. You can get your screens all organized. Well, little precursor as to some sound particle stuff. The key for me with this project was coming into the recording studio having already conceived of where every part was going to be before recording. And what this allowed was the use of a lot of different microphone arrays, um, so that I could capture where the instrument was supposed to be in the mix. As an example, here's an 11 channel array of Shep's microphones that was used for lots of kind of larger ensembles. So if I want the brass to be orchestrated behind me, say the trombone in the left surround, trumpet in the right left rear surround, trumpet in the right rear surround, trombone in the right surround, then we just record them behind the array, and then the array is also recording the space so that the reflections are kind of built into it. And what this allows is at every single layer, this record is built in more of a film style, like striping overdubs. And it means that all of the spatiality of the parts are built into the recordings themselves. Now, this draws directly from classical immersive recording and surround recording, film scoring. Here, for instance, is a 5-channel array of kind of 3 omnis up front, like a decatree, and 2 to the rears with omnis kind of in the ceilings for height channel information. And the key was, and this is not about I don't want to get into necessarily all the mic techniques, but as an example, you can see like here are Himalayan bowls where there's a 11 channel array faced into the instrument. So at every single layer, because the composition was already defined in the studio, we can capture the thing at the source the way it's supposed to sound in 3 dimensions. And what this allowed was a real change for me as a mixer, in the sense that by the time I left the recording studio, and there's about 30 recording days for this project, everything was already where it was supposed to be. And so
Wow.
largely the biggest part of the mixing process is very much balance between close microphones and ambient microphones or immersive microphones, to find out, how ambient do I want something? How discrete do I want something? But by doing this at the source, it takes away that problem we have of creating decorrelated content to be able to
Yeah.
spatialize a sound. Now,
Yes.
of course, one of the best decorrelative tools on the planet is sound particles itself. It's what you do so well is tools that are intended to take sounds and make them 3-dimensional. And we do that via proper decorrelation, by adding timing information, by adding phase manipulation, by adding other changes to the audio in a virtualized space. But at the very core here, like, but kind of just post composition, is the idea of ensuring that every layer. I'll give like another example here. Here's a sarangi, a beautiful Indian classical instrument. There's a lot of Indian influence in this music, where I've got the height information for the soloist already kind of baked into the recording. And yeah, Tony, I do see a little note here. Think we can hear my voice through
Oh,
your cans.
just muted. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah. And so without getting into it, I mean, there are hundreds of layers of music on this record. And so every single instrument we hear, here's a nice shot of some microphones. Every single instrument that we hear has been spatialized at the source. But then we get to the mix. And I think one of the things about production and making music in general is the most important thing that we always have to do is define our intent. And the intent here is not to present something with realism. I'm not, I want to capture as many things as beautifully as possible because the instruments, the performers, the space sounds amazing. But I don't care as a producer or as a composer. Like, I'm not trying to make a literal presentation where you're sitting in the middle of like an orchestral presentation, like of pure acoustic music. Not that I don't love that. I love that. I want to have that for the strings and the brass. I want to have that for the drum set, which already sounds great in the space. I want to have that for the acoustic Indian instruments that are involved, for the voices. But then I also want there to be surrealism everywhere. Um, to be able to intersperse that with synthesizers, with effects, with the song that I think we'll focus on today is the 4th song of the record called Tapestry, where the underlying kind of uh, texture of it is Foley and found sound, knives, forks, metallic objects.
Yeah.
But I want that at the same time as having an immersively captured string ensemble and a brass ensemble. And so this is where the joy of the technology comes in. And I really do see kind of the tools, whether it be Pro Tools, whether in this case it be Atmos, and sound particles, all being compositional, like really not only being post-production tools, but really kind of at the stage where mixing began. In many ways, these tools made me go back to the drawing board and kind of level up what the composition was itself, to say,
Yeah.
actually, this stuff is now we can kind of see that as sound design or as orchestration. You know, sometimes the word orchestration and sound design get put after composition, but for me, I really do see them as one thing, if you allow them to be. In that, you know, the it doesn't always have to be this linear process of composition and then this and then this and then this.
Absolutely. I just want to add to that, Justin. So, coming from a film scoring background myself, usually the only place where I see a composer and an engineer doing the mix while recording is a choir, right? If you have like a 60-piece choir, they might say, oh, can you please take 2 steps back? Can you take 3 steps forward? Because they are trying to mix while they are scoring. And
Of course.
usually I've seen that limited to just choirs. Everything else, they're like, yeah, we'll fix it in post. So thank you for taking the lead on taking the mixing methodology and mixing thought process to your compositional and recording thought process and making it all one and the same. Like you said, all this has to work hand in hand and not separated as different buckets, right? And as a footnote, I also want to just add that's the same philosophy we had at Sound Particles when we created instruments like Skydust, for example, right? The idea is you play one note and you can already decide, okay, as a composer, I want the oscillator 1 to be in the front, oscillator 2 to be in the back, so forth and so on. So we are in alignment with our thought processes as a company and as engineers, producers here at Sound Particles, and I'm sure everyone in the crowd will also align with your way of thinking. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, thanks. And I mean, look, the world of multi-channel music, the world of spatial composition, the world of that we're involved in here. This is a long lineage of history, tradition, practice, experimentation. I mean, of course, we can go back to the idea of spatial composition existing pre-Renaissance in terms of putting choirs on the rafters or, you know, experimenting. Of course, the electroacoustic musicians of the earliest 20th century did a lot of live performances where space was a part of the composition. Then a good example would be Walt Disney and Fantasound, you know, coming into delivering something in quad, and then if
Yep.
you know, for so like it keeps going and it keeps going. Um, and so all of like, I don't know, whatever philosophies have amalgamated to make this particular project is just drawing from studying the past and studying the present and studying my colleagues' work and being inspired. So as much as, you know, you're saying taking the lead in that area, I see it as just taking the lead from the best practices that I have appreciated of those around me who do amazing things. And I should, you know, I want to acknowledge that on this project, on the team, I mean, there's so many people. It's a huge collaboration, but Morten Lindberg is one of the co-immersive producers of the project. I admire Morten's work as a classical recordist and producer in a huge way. Drew Jurecka, who's the violinist that you'll hear on the project, is also a co-producer and very much involved at a deep musical level. And Michael Romanowski is the mastering engineer. So, you know, it's a family effort, but I'm happy to be I'm happy that people are willing to come along on whatever ride this particular one is. So I'm going to get into some of the music. What we're looking at here is the full album in the ADM. I'm going to do a tiny little tour of the architecture just so we know what we're listening to and how it's coming to you. But we can't listen to the whole record. If I open up a different song, it'll take us down a different lane because each song of the 8 pieces on the record kind of have their own, you know, their own stylistic journeys. There's a lot of jazz music, there's a lot of Indian music. But the piece that we'll choose today, Tapestry, is the one that takes a lot of influence from, I would say, electronic music meets jazz music meets chamber music. So that's kind of the zone we'll go, and the other songs we'll do something else with those, you know, another day. But I will say
Awesome.
that if there are any questions along the way, I'm gonna. It's hard to keep an eye on the chat while I'm focused on the session, but please do put them out there. You know, rather than saving them to the end, if there's something that feels like it would be best to clarify as we're going, I'll trust, you know, Tony, you and the team for
Yes.
relaying those messages.
Yes, please, everyone who's attending, please leave your questions in the Q&A. Myself and my amazing colleague Eduardo will keep an eye on the chat while Justin is showing us the magic.
Great. So what we're looking at here is the Pro Tools session. As I said, you can see the 8 songs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, very quickly, you'll see that I'm using almost all of the objects in this record. But that does not mean that I'm using all of the space in the record. And by that, I mean, as you're going to see, I'll toggle between Pro Tools and the renderer. I really composed this music for 9.1.6. Not because I'm going to make the argument that the object bed is better than the non-discrete channel mixing. And again, by discrete channel, I mean sound per speaker. But I found that to be a very logical, basically 15 points, right? 9 and 6, and then the LFE being a discrete channel thing, was just very inspiring to me as a spatial orchestration tool. I have a little diagram here to just clarify exactly what we're talking about. The idea of, or do I? I thought I did. Okay, whatever. 9.1.6 is, of course, our LCR, left wide, left surround, left rear, right rear, 9 on this layer, and then 6 on the heights. Those 15 points I found to be very helpful from an orchestration standpoint. So what you see here, in each color, in each group, is basically a stem group, a subgroup of a 9.0.4 or 9.0.6 object group. Some people would call it an object bed. I like to call it an object group, that I organized in these instrument groups so that when I get to the ADM and the master file, which you're looking at right here, this is the whole record. When I went to the cinema remix, which is a totally different process we don't have time to talk about necessarily today, I was able to bring up this master session and still have a lot of control to then expand this into a proper cinematic remix. We spent time on a dub stage and made a dedicated version. So what this does is essentially creates a stem out of about 9 groups of instruments spatially, so that on the dub stage I could move the objects around and further mix this properly for cinema. So it's just a logical way to use the ADM essentially as a container of a whole bunch of tracks. But when we listen to it, realistically, if I was to render this to a 916 wave file, it would sound virtually the same in the home entertainment way. So what we're doing when we're listening is I've got this all mapped right now to the renderer, and you are listening to the binaural feed from the renderer. And of course, the binaural settings, the binaural render modes are active. So what you're listening to is indeed the master file. Will Zoom give you all of its audio fidelity? That is yet to be determined.
Hopefully. Justin, one quick question. Question we have from Roger is, do you calibrate your sub like we do in film? Is it plus 10 dB is a specific question.
The answer is kind of yes and kind of no. Yes, very, very similar. But of course, like the way in which we measure it is, the answer is yes, but the way in which you measure it is slightly different. And then to a certain degree, I think in music, we all have, there's a little bit more room for taste. But I would say that it's a very similar process to what you're doing in film. So when I take this to the dub stage, it works really well. I will say one of the things that needs to be addressed at a dub stage is the LFE oftentimes goes up in level. Just in a large space, we now have much more room for those low frequencies to propagate properly. And, you know, LFE in a cinema is a good time. So good question. I'm going to play the song. It's called Tapestry. You're going to hear a whole bunch of forks and knives and tape measures and drills and all sorts of things as a part of the landscape. Let me play 2 minutes of the song. We can just kind of get our head in it, and then I'll start to unpack some of the things around it. So I'll stop it there. Thank you. Now someone said they're listening in mono, but most folks should be hearing in stereo. Are you hearing? I'm hearing it off
I'm
the
hearing
Zoom
the
feed in
stereo and I
stereo.
love the use of space. Yeah, I'm hoping everyone, at least most people, are also getting stereo. Yeah,
Okay. So, anyways, just making sure. So that's the first third of the piece. Uh, let's unpack it. Um, Again, the goal with this is actually co-written with a friend of mine who's the drummer. His name's Sean Rompre, amazing drummer. And uh, so the first thing that started for us was we kind of agreed. We're like, you know what? I want to do something. I want to do something with Foley. I just, I've heard we have some influences. I don't know if anyone's ever heard the record Eamon Tobin's Foley Room. It's a really, really great kind of dub electronic record. I remember actually seeing it live. Fantastic record. I remember Sean and I actually share an experience of a very late night when we were younger, listening in a car and just, having our minds blown. And we kind of just shared that. And I was like, you know what? I really think that being realized immersively from the source has uh, a lot of exciting possibilities for both of us creatively. Um, as for the 714 audio movers, we could have sent that separately, but for the purposes of this, we decided to send binaural. But
yeah,
keep in touch. There are other ways to get to hear this the way it was intended as well, of course. So, anyways, back to it. The record's called Foley Room by Eamon Tobin, just as a reference. There's also like I'm a Pink Floyd fan, and I was reminded listening to my with my kids the like earlier this week. We were driving, listening to Dark Side of the Moon because they are young, and like there we are. Uh, the beginning of Money. I was like, oh right, this is embedded in my very psyche. So
yeah,
just wanted to explore that. Now, how that happened is first composing the piece. We want to get a sense of the groove. We want to get a sense of the melody, the bass line, the guitar layers, the string melodies, compositionally, I think back to the core of like, there's got to be a form, there's got to be a story to tell. And when we're composing those things, the strings are orchestrated behind in this piece. The drums are in front, bass is in front. The guitar, I'll solo things for you as we get there, is all around us. I've orchestrated different parts for different speakers. Um, so once there was like enough of a framework for the piece to feel um like a piece of music, like there's a bass solo in there, there's a great saxophone solo that we'll listen to later. Now is where the Foley really enters as what I want to do is I want to use these gestures to be able to augment the piece, kind of not unlike how electronic musicians or even pop producers are going through a track and just trying to, every 4 bars or every 8 bars or even less, trying to just bring in little ear candy bits and things to just kind of create momentum. Now, how these are created is multi-layered. And so let me start in there. So what I have here is the object group. This is a 9.0, no LFE, 9.0.6 object group. As you can see, here's our 15 channels of all of the Foley tracks and percussion tracks. Let me just solo this and I'll press play off the top of the song. I'll keep it playing and slowly bring in some other layers. Now I'll bring in the drum layers in a second. Here's the drop. Right? Now I'm going to bring in guitar. I'll bring in bass. And now I'll go back to just these layers. So throughout the entire song, there's a full orchestration of it. Now, the thing is that in this track, with every single little bit, this track reached about 1,000 tracks, and opening that up during a Zoom presentation is asking for some serious trouble. So I'm going to piece together the story for you, and I do have some of the bits that I can solo for you. First, sound particles. For me, my introduction to sound particles was prior to Atmos was just as the standalone DAW that it is, and the particle generation is absolutely brilliant. It was a friend of mine named Jonathan Kotchak who showed it to me first, and so for this project, actually I'll contextualize it for you. So down at the bottom here, these are not synced with the master. Down at the bottom here, I have Go session import data, the greatest part of Pro Tools. I have brought in just the tracks. So what we're looking at here are just the sound particles layers from the original song. Here's a surround hi-hat that I'll show you. Here's a bunch of additional Foley layers that have all been particleized. And here is something called MIDI particles, which is another like 60 tracks of individual little elements. So here's the thing. One day, Tony, I hope that I can just kind of patch out to the sound particles DAW in real time and it can just do it all for me in place. But the reality is, in order to create, let's say, the bubble storm. So I've named them all with, I don't know that I would keep those names, but whatever, the bubble storm. Here's our bubble storm. So in order to make the bubble storm, I took literally wrapping bubble wrap and crunched it up. And I recorded it in mono with a Sheps MK4 at 96K. And I recorded it for a minute and then I cut it up into tiny one shots, which is really what Sound Particles wants to look for.
Right.
Sound Particles wants you to feed it lots of short little moments of audio that it will then connect to its particle generation. And and this is just for the one single moment, one single part of 1 second of the song. I then load my 100 samples of bubbles, me moving around the bubbles. And this was my approach to using sound particles for this song. So the big key here is my whole philosophy, as I explained, is the concept of multi-channel capture. So even on the acoustic instruments, everything is captured with microphone arrays. And this is what I love and connect to with sound particles so much, is what I did is I created a 9.1.6 capture array in sound particles. What we can do is we can go to the speaker render here, and I made a preset called Atmos 916. And, if you want to know how to do this better, Tony's your person, and I'm sure there's other resources that you could, but I've designed a microphone array, left at 30, center at 0, right at 30, and then around. So I've created a 9.1.6 capture according to what the speakers look like in Atmos.
Nice.
And this is identical to this Sheps array that I used for drums and strings and brass, which is this array here.
Makes sense.
It's an equidistant cardioid hemispherical array. And what this allows us to do is capture decorrelated space for anything that's around it. So it's an immersive microphone array. So I've built that in sound particles so that then what I do is that's my mic system, right? Then I make a particle emission. Now you're not going to hear audio right now because these are crazy sessions with hundreds of 96K tracks, but I can show them to you in Pro Tools post-rendering. So now I develop a particle generator. Particle generation in sound particles is deep. I would call myself a novice with it because every time Tony opens this program for me, he shows me another layer that Juno has designed. But just for, quick parameters, I've defined the shape of the particle emitter. I've defined how long it is, 30 seconds. I've defined how many particles per second. I've defined rotation velocity, how fast it's rotating around the space. I've defined acceleration of rotation, and I include random gain, granular synthesis, and random time pitch as parameters to my 100 bubble samples.
That's awesome.
And so what this means is that as these particles are coming around the space, they are also changing in pitch. They're changing in amplitude. Now, that's all cool. What's really cool to me is then taking this and being able to virtually capture it with a virtual microphone array, export it, as a 9.1.6 wave track and then bring it into Pro Tools as audio.
Yeah,
So here is
Justin.
my, yep,
Oh, sorry. Just want to explain one more quick thing. And also, you mentioned Nuno, and he just showed up. Hey, Nuno, welcome.
Hi everyone.
I know.
So I've been listening from the car because I have a meeting in Lisbon that I could not postpone and the traffic was hell. But I was listening everything from the second zero. So continue, Justin. I'm loving everything that you are saying. So
Thanks, Nuno.
Okay.
What I want to add, Justin, is it's amazing that you had the 916 or 906 mic. Whatever flavor of microphone you want. I just want to point out to everyone in the chat that you can also have multiple microphones to get perspectives. Right, so you
Exactly.
can have one 916 mic in the center, one 916 mic in the top, then 151 mic at the bottom. How many of microphones do you need for your project? Just want to point that out. Go ahead, Justin.
Exactly. Now, again, sometimes limitations are actually helpful. And so for me, from a composition standpoint, from a mixing standpoint, from a philosophy standpoint, the concept of 916 were guardrails that were very helpful for me in this project. And that's because um, I decided early on as the artist and the producer that I do want to commercially share this music, right? Like commercially sharing music doesn't make it good or bad. It's just a decision that we have to make. For instance, if I was to make music for an installation with 40 speakers, who cares about 916? If I'm mixing for cinema, who cares about 916, right? When I went to the cinema remix, 916 doesn't make sense anymore. We have LCR, we have a wall of speakers, there's array behavior, there's a rear wall of speakers, and there's a whole ceiling array of speakers. So, like, what we have to do is understand the technology and then decide how we want to interface with it. So, because I did make the decision that I want to release this music in commercially for listeners, which is, again, it's for better or for worse. As an artist, I wanted to do it. I chose to use Atmos. I know the format. We obviously are at a time when its distribution is good. It can get better, but it certainly is there. Blu-ray to me is like the real master format of this record because it contains the video and the Dolby True HD. 916 is the maximum fidelity that a home entertainment listener can experience. So that's why that, right? If they have the speakers, they will experience a discrete channel 916 mix.
Yes.
It's adaptable, all the reasons. This isn't like, but just to say, there's all sorts of other ways to go about it. It just depends on understanding the intent. So because I had that intent, 916 was very helpful for me because basically everything in Pro Tools, just like this, got routed to a 916 aux. And then those 916 auxes all got routed to their respective basically object group, which are
Right.
ultimately these stems that we're looking at in the master, right? There's actually a video I have online that explains this. It takes like 40 minutes to go through, but if you're curious to see the routing of the session, that's the logic. So bringing in a 916 track or a 9.0.6 track, if there's no LFE content, makes a lot of sense in this project. So when I go to Sound Particles, I just export basically this capture of this performance. Sound Particles is performing this gesture, which in this case, this is no longer the bubble one, but here's another. Which one is this called? This is called. How do I see the title of the file? Oh, there it is. This is Utensils Pitch Madness. So you can get a sense of it. Now let me solo some stuff for you. So back to the bubble storm. Here's the bubble storm. This is, again, now you're looking at a 9.0.6 track exported from Sound Particles as if I had taken a 906 microarray, put it in the middle of 20 people, all crinkling bubbles, but then with the surreal elements of pitch manipulation and granular synthesis that Sound Particles adds. Here's the bubbles. No, here's not the bubbles. One sec. Unmute the group. Now we should hear the bubbles. Right? It's a tiny little layer. Here's me with a hand drill. Here's knife hyperspace. And here's some scissors being added. Now, unto itself, is it too quiet? It might be just like it's pretty quiet stuff. Let me solo the
It's very
whole
quiet,
section. Yeah, so you know what? Okay, in that case, let me try again because these layers are, let me just turn, famous last words, let me just turn up the aux. There shouldn't be any clipping. There's so much headroom on this stuff. I'm going to press play around this section, and you're just going to hear these various things, and I'll solo some stuff. I mean, again, you get the picture of what the process was. Just a solo one. Here's the utensils shower. Here's me taking a bunch of violin arpeggios, feeding it into sound particles. Now, let me contextualize for you because out of context, it's obviously very, very weird. Well, depends on your definition of weird, I guess. But you know, it's a very specific thing. But let me put it into the piece for you, so now we can hear it in the master. So what we're gonna do is, if I take a guess, it's right around here. We're gonna listen to the end of the bass solo leading into this breakdown, and now you're gonna hear how it sounded in the master. Let me make sure this is muted. Just a sec. We'll keep listening, and you can kind of hear how these two worlds kind of morph. Maybe we'll listen to the end of the track. This is the saxophone solo that kind of builds up and takes us to the end.
Justin, I'm sure others will agree. The drum mix, of course, is like butter and silk. Dude, well done. And like someone said, the sound is coming from knife store storage. The details are so good. So one question I have for you, The
Yep.
those particle groups that you brought into the Pro Tools session, did you do extensive processing after that for imaging, or is that pretty much how it came out of sound particles?
No, it's a very, very good question. So the answer is a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I went into sound particles with the goal of creating these three-dimensional gestures, right? Like that's what its big job was, is to essentially create these performances. And the sources going in are really good. Like I recorded every single one of those. It's all a Sheps MK4 into a Millennia 96K, even down to knives and forks. Like I was obsessive about how it's recorded so
Nice.
that we can have that kind of ASMR kind of like clarity. Because especially when you get to a cinema, this explodes. But if you don't have all of that transient detail, if the noise floor is a problem, it's a disaster. So I was very, very careful about it. But this is the fun of bringing in these tracks. So check this out. I'll go back to, this is our sound particles imports. Um, I re-sound particleized the sound particles exports many times. So if we take, let's take a new one. Let's find one that sounds fun. The names are, I'm reminded the names are kind of silly. Let's find out what the tape wand is. A tape wand was definitely the tape part is a tape measure, just going shh. It's kind of an awesome sound. Um, I will say, the most embarrassing part of making this record. At one point, I'm in the studio, which is in my backyard, and my wife came out looking for all of our utensils, and I had them for like 2 days. I'm surprised she didn't notice before. And there I am, like dropping forks and knives on a table, and I just remember. I wish it was captured because it was like whatever. It was funny, and I
That's
remember looking
awesome.
over with this look of both like, okay, I could recognize what this looks like, but also like, you kind of ruined the take. Like, I was, I was really getting it there. I was dropping these forks and I was doing a good job. And she just looked at me and just like walked away. I was like, okay, we'll talk about this later.
No,
So
but yeah, but it's interesting you're talking about the make sure that you have fantastic recordings because, like in a sound library, where for those that have the experience creating sound libraries, you have to create fantastic recordings because you are adding multiple tracks on top of
exactly,
tracks. Here is exactly the same. If you have 1,000 recordings with a lot of background noise, even if individual it is not much, but when you're adding 10,000 those background noises, you are also creating a lot of thousands of background noises together. So
exactly.
making, yeah,
Yeah. So it's a really, really, my studio is obviously acoustically is kind of perfect for this because as a mastering studio, it's relatively dead. So very, very low noise floor and not a ton of, I don't need reflections for the, forks and knives and scissors. I just need pure direct sound. So let's find out. Let's listen to it first and then I'll show you what effects are on it. Oh, sorry. This is, just have to unmute there we go. So again, it's just one, as you heard, there's so many things that are amalgamating to the whole, but on here I am using density. Now, one reason that I chose to use density in these cases, um, you'll see there are tracks where I'm using reverb and I'm just feeding it into an immersive reverb because after the fact, I felt as though that layer was too dry. I want to push it away from the ears. Um, but in this particular case, usually what I was using density to do is I felt like I did the sound particleization and I just wish I created more particles. But the amount of time that it took me to go back to sound particles, re-export, Tony has told me that the new sound particles 3 is way faster. But at the time, it would take like 15 minutes to render one of these things. So I was like, oh, I already got it in place. I'm happy. So literally throwing density on top of it was just to add more particles to an already particleized system. And it sounds great. I mean, I really like this plugin. I find density to be something where you can make it be very aggressive and suddenly it becomes very diffuse. But it's almost like a random early reflections generator that's kind of just throwing early reflections, especially if you don't, and then a little bit of detuning, which kind of is helping with decorrelation to just kind of fill the space a little bit more. So if we just kind of take a quick tour, you know, I'm equalizing some of them, I'm compressing some of them. I use this compressor a lot in immersive if I wanted to make it more present. Energy panner, let's find out what this one is. This is the Zen ball emitter. Um, my parents went to China when I was a kid, and they brought back these Zen these two balls that you hold in your hand. You kind of move around like this, and they have this amazing sound to them. I've always just had them since I was a kid. So I recorded them quite a lot. Oops, sorry, just a sec. Let me solo this for you, and then we'll identify what Energy Panner's doing. So it's, now I'm using, you can
That's
tell
so
in
cool, man.
so that's all just like these two little Zen. I say Zen because they have the yin yang on them, but these two, like, they have these little metallic things inside that have this jingling, and also when they click together, you get that kind of marble sound. Um, so I recorded a couple of minutes of it, cut it into one shots, same process, created a particle, a shape for them. But then you'll hear here, there's quite a lot of manipulation with granular synthesis, with pitch manipulation, so allowing the pitch to change on each sample. Um, and then, for some reason, I felt like it wasn't enough, and I use Energy Panner. Let's see what Energy Panner is doing on this track. Yeah, so it's just twisting the whole 916 image around us in a circle.
That's so cool. Justin, I just want to point out, since you mentioned the rendering speed. So one, the new sound particles, it's 20 times faster, so you won't have to wait as long to render things. But also, just so you know, you can have plugins, all of these plugins inside sound particles as you're sculpting your next record that's going to get even more awards. So you can do all this in Pro Tools, of course, but now with the new version, you can do all this part during the compositional sculpting stage inside sound particles.
Right. You know, ultimately for me, the reason to be like, yeah, sometimes like when I'm at this stage of the record, it's like, okay, I'm in Pro Tools. Everything's playlisted, everything's organized. I
True,
know the
yeah.
session. And so at this stage, which is, you know, this is happening at about 50% of the process. Um, it's kind of six, you know, if you started in sound particles and you did it all there, or I think what I would do now that I know that the software has kind of become more efficient, because you know this is happening in 2022,
Right.
2023, maybe I'm doing this part of the process in 2023. um you know, every year our computers are getting better, our processing getting, everything is getting infinitely better. But I think when I first learned sound particles in 2000, I don't know, I was first brought to my attention maybe 2018, something along those lines. um the computers at that point, like, that's pre M1. I mean, we're, you know, struggling to
Yeah.
get through sessions still. So it's like one of those things where you learn it a certain way and you just do it. But I'm happy to hear that it's evolving, because the workflow would just take less time, because having to
Yes.
go and render the one signal, bring it in here. Now, the fun thing though is that I basically created, as you can see, a sample library for myself of all of these different gestures. And now I can copy and paste them and fly them around my Pro Tools session. I can
Right.
add fade ins. I can send them to my reverbs. I can send them to my delays. Like, so really all bets are off in terms of there are no rules with any of this stuff for me as a producer. I just want to make that thing happen. I saw one note come up where someone said it was like angelic chaos, and
Yeah.
I love that. I think that that's exactly what the point was. I think with this piece is there's a lot of intensity to it, but all of the music of the record, I mean, I want the melodies to have a sense of beauty, even if it's chaotic or intense at times. I do think that I tend towards enjoying melodicism that, you know, has that overall singable kind of quality to it, even if it is a little bit intense. So I want to pause for a sec and just say, are there questions out there? Are there observations? Are there anything that we should kind of touch upon? I mean, I can keep going gladly, but I'm just curious.
Hi, Justin. So I'll ask a few questions that people have been asking in the chat. So one of the last ones was, what are the feelings and sensations that you are trying to get when creating your Atmos music? This was asked by Duarte Gelha.
Yeah, I think the literal sensation is that I want the listener to be in a place where, they're seated down and this ensemble is truly positioned around them. So you have 30, 40 artists all literally playing in towards you. Um, so that's like from a composing standpoint, that's a very literal image that I give myself. However, what I'd like is the acoustic principles of those things to be different. So I want the brass to sound like you're listening in this big hall, while at the same time these knives and forks are super dry and up close. So I think that the feeling that I'm looking to create is going between this world of experiencing an acoustic ensemble to suddenly being in a world that's just very imaginative. It's instrumental music minus the last track. There's some lyrics at the very end. I like the idea that a listener can just interpret it the way that they want. I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to create an immersive feeling, and that feeling um, is a very personal one. But I really do think that the use of space in music can engage our emotions as a listener. I know it does for me. So yeah, I think I'd like a place that is hyper detailed, is relaxing, but also engaging at the same time. I'm curious if that answers the question.
Yeah, I think you also touched on this in the beginning. You wanted to create a bit of realism, but also add surrealism to it, right? So at the end of the
Yeah,
day, the listener gets to have their own perspective of what the experience is. It's beautiful.
totally.
Yeah, definitely. Also, people are curious about what kind of microphones do you use when you are recording things. Do you usually record things in mono, ambisonics? Can you share a bit about that process?
Absolutely. So let's just kind of take a quick tour through this presentation. So we'll get to see all sorts of mics. So this, for instance, is an array that was set up to record. You haven't heard it on this song, but maybe I'll play one other song certainly before we stop, so you can hear one of the other palettes of the record. On the left here, you would have alto saxophone, trumpet, and tenor saxophone or soprano saxophone, depending on the song. So I've got close mics, which you can see, U67 and a Coles 4038, an M49 and a 77DX and RCA. So a lot of really gorgeous large diaphragm condenser tube mics, all into either Fern preamps or Millennius. Those are kind of the two preamps that were being used extensively on the project. Then the immersive array part of this, and there's always both. Like there's never a time when anything is not recorded with close mics so that I have the precision and the closeness that I want, and the immersive mics that are positioned according to where they'll be in the mix. So for instance, in the mix, the alto saxophone is in the left wide, the trumpet is in the center, and the tenor saxophone is in the right wide. So they're dispersed in that space accordingly. And then the array is capturing that perspective. So now I can take LCR, which is this Decca tree. I can put this into LCR. And then I can take the M50s, M150s. I wish they were M50s. M150s in the rears, so this is a 5-point array. And I can place those in the back. And now what happens as a listener is it literally feels as though you're sitting there listening to this ensemble, and I don't need to use reverb to position that instrument. Now, you can't see them too much here, but over here, this stand and this stand, these are 4006s, DPA Omni mics faced up, and there are 4 in the corners of the room. So now I have a 5.0.4 array capturing the space. Now, that's one day and one instrument. So here's the 11-channel array you've already seen. These are Sheps MK4s. This is my main large format array for the record. I'm using tons of close mics on drums, right? Like I got 441s on drums and a FET 47, 414s on the toms. I don't really use the 77, but this is kind of an over-shoulder mic. LCR of Sheps, so close mics, kind of like a modern drum recording. Here is an inward-facing array. I might play this one for you, actually. With the inward facing array, let me go to this photo, is you're in the center of this. Your head is right here, except you get to hear it from the outside. So it's truly impossible. You get to hear the instrument emanate out, but you get the perspective of being in the middle of it. And so there's 7 on the lower level of Schoep's MK4s. These are cardioids, all positioned 1 mic per speaker, and then 4 DPA 4006s on the upper layer. And it literally, like, it positions us, you know what? Because let me just play that for you for 1 second. This is the song Repose. Check this out. Let me just make sure that thing is muted. And there's no EQ, there's no nothing on these microphones in this master. It's just the mics. And then the bass Vina's on top of it, but see where the objects are here. And then here you can picture my friend Andrew playing them. So it's I'd say it's my favorite recorded moment of the record, because this was very early on in the process, and I remember setting this array up, and yeah, the resonance between multiple bowls. So Gordon, like, that's the thing, is I've recorded these instruments many times, and one of the biggest challenges is that you stand there in front of them and it sounds amazing, and then you place a microphone and you realize that one point in space does not do even remote justice to the complicated nature of how the sound is emanating. And so by actually capturing in this immersive capacity, which is a hemisphere, it's a dome, right? It's an equidistant dome to one center point. And you place 1 microphone per speaker in 7.0.4, so 11 channels. As long as the levels are matched, you got to have super low, very, very clean microphones, right? So the Schoeps and the DPAs are as good as they get when it comes to that level of low distortion, low noise floor. The Millennias, the DAD preamps, 96, like, it's all important. The room is gorgeous. This just allows us to experience, like, it is realism, but it's also hyper realism because the perspective. And I remember when I did this recording early on in the sessions, and I played it for the other engineers and, like, the other folks, it was just one of those moments where I think when they all looked at me, maybe like I was a little nuts. I mean, they might still do that, but at least they were like, I get it. I get what it is that you want to do. We want to create something immersively at the source. And quite frankly, like, there's a stereo mix of the record. I made it. I'm very happy with the stereo mix. It's a completely separate mix. I had to strip all things apart. I had to ditch microphones that are not necessary for stereo. But until the immersive record was done, I just didn't care. I don't care. I didn't care about stereo. It's not my problem. It's a later problem, because that's not what the art was. The art was this. The art is the idea of making this 3-dimensional sculpture. And then later on, I make the stereo version, and I've got to wrangle the technology and figure it out. But at the source, this just creates this thing the way that it is, rather than having to adapt something else. And it was really quite inspiring. So this is a long answer to, from a microphone standpoint, I would say that mostly Neumann's, Schoeps, DPAs, a real hit microphone, maybe a surprise mic. Here, check it out. Would be these mics right here, the Samar VL37As. These are active ribbon mics that I just love. I love them. I love them. I love them. Obviously, the Coles, the 44s, the 77s, they're darker ribbon mics. They give us that sort of really, really robust mid-range and high roll-off. Where the Samars have this extension in the highs. And I found that I paired them often with like something like a 67 and a Samar together would mean that if they were phase coherent, I could use both, or sometimes I could just ditch the condenser and have just the ribbon
It's
without
a
having
ribbon,
to
right?
do a lot of, yeah, without having to have a lot of high frequency additions. So not a ton of dynamic mics, unless I was on drums. I'm very much a condenser user. Some old Neumanns, some 54s, KM54s, KM56s. Yeah, you get the idea. I did see someone's note on the drums there quickly.
Yeah, could we please once again show the drum miking for a second, please? And while you put that picture up, I also want to add one of my favorite combos is Royer 121's the back of it, paired
Yep.
with a condenser like a C414. It just brings that golden glow, the way
Sure.
I call it, towards the high end.
Sure. Exactly. And yeah, at the end of the day, the microphone has to match the source, has to match the intent. So drums, there's a lot of close mics, but you know what? This is a pretty fun example. So here's the close mics of the drums. I'd say like pretty aggressive, over miking of a drum set. And I've said this before, but like someone could say, oh, well, I can record a drum set with one mic. And I'd say, yeah, it's awesome. But whatever, we recorded a drum set with 38 mics and in immersive, it's awesome. Like it depends on the context. I'm going to play something for you, but I saw two questions come up. The 69, the USM 69 is a, actually, I can't remember what the question was, but it's a stereo USM 69. I think it actually only made it on this record to record these chimes that my brother Derek, who's the drummer, said he had set up. And I don't think I let the Mark Tree make it on the record. And there was one other question there that I saw kind of just in a fleeting moment, but feel free to bring it up. Now, in the room though, so behind the drum set, right? Like let's say here's the drum set. 15 feet out is this array. That's where the 38 mics comes from. But check this out. And this is the fun about the way this master is organized. I'm going to solo the drum tracks for you. Here's all the drum tracks. This is a 9.0.4 presentation of drums. I'm now going to take away the array. You hear a little bit of reverb because it is baked into the tracks.
But wow,
Here's just the array. This is the sound of the room. Here's the close mics. Here's bringing in the array. Just opens up.
comes alive.
So yeah, good point. The kick is so present in the room. And that's good. Having decorrelated low frequency energy. It has to be decorrelated. It cannot be the same as the kick. It has to be here you want to hear the tom, I think you said the tom fill. Let me see if I can find a tom fill. Probably around here. One sec, we'll find a tom fill for you. Wasn't hitting a lot of toms. Let me see if I can find you one. Okay, well there's a little toms. Here's the close mics. Right? Here's the array. And here's together. Now, in binaural, it's one thing. Now take it to a full 916 setup. It's fundamentally different. Take it to a cinema. It's fundamentally different again. And the key is the correlation. If we're going to have signal in the front and in the back of the same instrument, it has to be separated by time at a minimum, and also just by envelope and by all those things to avoid the image actually shrinking, especially in binaural. If it's not decorrelated properly, it's just going to create a volume buildup. So the array is creating this perspective. And now instead of a reverb, I just have it. I just capture it at the source.
Yeah, the reverb becomes invisible. You become you focus on the music and not on technicalities, right? Also, I just want to point out it sounds great on binaural, of course, but those of you who have not listened to Immersed, this album, in person, in spatial, you have to follow Justin on his website or socials. Find out how you can experience this album in spatial, in person. Believe me, it's life changing. I usually tell
Appreciate
people,
that.
right, dude, I'm being honest, man. I got goosebumps when I listened to it at the Dolby playback you did in LA. But one challenge we usually have, I'm sure you do too, Justin, is explaining spatial audio to people who are not fully experienced it yet. They've read about it, they've heard about it. The way I explain to people is it's like trying to explain chocolate to someone who has never tasted chocolate. You can write books about chocolate, tell them about it, but unless you gave them a piece and they experience chocolate, same thing with spatial audio. You can watch the webinar, hear binaural, but until and unless you hear this record in a theater or a studio, that's the way, that's what's going to tip your thought process and the way you create music.
And I
Just want
will also add to that that please see the clips from the album, okay, because it's amazing seeing the videos on top of this. And we'll also I already knew that Justin was a fantastic engineer, but oh my God, he's a fantastic musician also. You have to see the, the clips. But continue,
Thank you.
Justin, because I feel that every time that I open my mouth, I'm removing time from you. So continue giving me because I'm
No,
enjoying
no, no. I
everything.
mean, look, we're all in it. We're all in it together, and it's So that question, this is what happens. The question was, what mics do you use? And it led to exploring, a bunch of mics that are all very carefully, in this case, carefully chosen, I think, for clarity, right? Really, really just looking for clarity, low noise floor. But at the end of the day, this is all the players, right? Like it doesn't matter what microphone, doesn't matter how many microphones, it doesn't matter if the players aren't killing it. And so the musicians here are the key. And these are musicians who are like family to me. My brother's literally the drummer. But people that I've worked with throughout my career as a bassist or as a producer, as a mastering engineer, and people that I trust and people that I write for. Like when I write the music, I really think about that person playing and knowing their skills. And I'm very blessed to be surrounded by these insanely good musicians, because if they create the sound at the source, they create the groove, they create the parts. They are the ones who are, ultimately together. I'm playing bass on this as well. Like we are realizing the music. Then our responsibility as engineer comes into to capture it in a way that it's appropriate. But the performances it's everything. That's where the real emotion, that's where the actual source of it is. And I will say that it was really, really inspiring. At the studio, they didn't have an Atmos setup, so I brought in. Let me just a sec here. I brought in speakers to be able to make it into kind of a makeshift, but we tuned it really well, but a makeshift kind of 914. I had 916 initially, but then the musicians kept walking into the center height channel speaker. They come out of the studio, they're all kind of in the zone, and they kept walking into it. So we went with 914, and the ability to bring the musicians in from the other room, right? Because they're in there tracking, you can see where they are. And for them to be able to come in and experience what it is that we're trying to create is invaluable. We all know. I mean, even if whatever, we're making any record anyway, you bring the musician into the room at the right time as a producer, you bring them in once they're like feeling good about a take, they take a little break, they get some perspective. And when they get this perspective, you don't even need to talk about technology. I don't need to educate them about spatial audio. It's like what you're saying, Tony. It's like you just feel it. And now all of a sudden, when I'm asking for crazy amounts of overdubs or vocal layers or this or this or this, they understand. They understand on a physical level. Cool. This is why we want to do this. And maybe I'll give an example of something on this same song, Repose. Check this out. So the vocalist Subir Shankran. I'm gonna press play on the song. I'm gonna get my bearings here, and then I'm gonna solo some stuff. That's drums. Okay. So just check out this kind of section. It's a bass vina solo leading into a melody. I'm gonna do one other thing. Okay, and I might regret this in 5 minutes, but Nuno, I do have the video. We're gonna take a chance and we're gonna put on the video engine. Let's find out. Let's find out if Pro Tools is in the mood or not.
It's going to work.
Yeah, it's looking promising, but I know that everybody in this chat knows exactly the feeling that we have right now. Sending prayers, yeah, appreciate it. So again, the reason that I have this session is like some of my playbacks for this record, I've playing with fire. I know, Alan. It's just like, hey, things are going well. You know what we should do? I used Pro Tools in many instances to do the playback at different installations. And so, as we know, like one of the big challenges outside of a DCP or a Blu-ray, playing back full high-res video and full high-res Atmos, it's not really a thing. So Pro Tools and my laptop became like a companion. This session has been played probably 40 times in different places around the world that were kind of like not but installation size scenarios and also educational scenarios like NAM or AES or whatnot. So now the moment of truth is, let's bring up our video. Here it is. And now you can, okay, so you'll see the video and let's watch and listen a little bit. And sorry if there's a delay. There's probably going to be a delay on your side. Yeah, it's out of sync. So again, we've kind of changed palette there. Bruno, the instrument I'm playing there is called the bass vina. It's an instrument that I invented, actually. It's a fretless bass, 4 playing strings, 2 thumb-based drone strings, and then a harp for Indian classical music. So this record, again, it goes between these different musical influences of all those things. Okay, we had fun with video. Let's not have any more fun with video. The sync is all off. I forgot about that. It's like, of course. So in this moment, what I was kind of saying about like the collaboration part, here's the saxophones. Okay, just kind of getting oh, here it is. This is what I want. So check this out. So Subha Shankaran is the vocalist. She's so unbelievably amazing. So here's orchestration of 5 voices. So here's the center channel. Here's bringing in the left surround. Different performance, of course. Here's the right surround. And then here's the left rear surround. And then here's the right rear surround. Taking away the center. Now, let me bring in the rest of the melody. Which is orchestrated clarinet. Sorry, hit the mic. Clarinet in the center. Alto saxophone, tenor saxophone, guitar, violin. And then in the mix, beautiful sarangi player. Again, this is a photo of the sarangi. Here's an of the instrument. So the idea there of like being able to bring Suba into the studio and say, okay, we did one take. Okay, vocalists are like, cool, doing a left and right take, very pop thing to do, you know, kind of hug the vocals. But there's another song where Suba is in 15 channels. And when she was able to experience it, now it's not me just saying, hey, don't worry, this will be cool later. It's like involving the musician in the creative process. Now, hearing it in spatial and real time, I'm not opposed to the idea of trying to figure out how to use binaural for headphones, but honestly, as a tracking musician myself, I just felt like when I'm on the floor, I don't want to be distracted by anything. I just want to hear my parts. I want to play in time. I want to play in tune. So we just listened in stereo as a stereo fold of the whole affair for tracking purposes. And then again, they can come in the room, hear it for real, take that imagination and kind of take it out to the floor. And it's huge. It's huge.
It's huge. I think you also opened up the space to the musicians, right? Usually they don't think about the space in the mix when they're playing. I think by
Yeah,
doing that, you allow them that luxury where they realize, oh, I can play this part here, this part here. So again, kudos to
exactly.
you for empowering them on that.
Yeah, empowering your folks and bring them into it. And when they can hear it, you don't have to explain. They don't need to understand objects and beds and code. That doesn't matter. They just need to
Yes.
understand space is an option. And it takes 2 seconds for a good musician to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Yeah, oh cool. I can put something behind you. Great. Let's do it. Like it's immediately felt. And it's immediately something like I'll give one quick story is the beginning of in this song. Let me find the duff part. So Nagme, her name's Nagme Faramond, incredible Persian percussionist. And I had an idea that the duff, which is the Persian frame drum, um, was going to be in the left surround, right surround. I thought like being flanked by a duff would be cool.
Nice.
And she came in, she tracked, she came into the room and listened, didn't really say much, and then listened. It was like, okay, cool. Can I go back out on the floor? Like put me out there and I'll do something. I thought maybe she heard a performance thing that she wanted to tighten up. She's like, okay. And she just took over. She's like, mute the tracks that you did. I don't want those anymore. I was like, okay. He's like, okay, do one for me in that front speaker in front of you. Did a take. She's like, great. Do another one for that front speaker in front of you. Did a take. She's like, now do one in the back corner and there. Did a take. Now do another one in the back corner. She, without any knowledge of immersive audio, Atmos surround, like to my knowledge, I don't think she did, immediately created a quadraphonic presentation of her instrument. Came back in 15, 20 minutes later, listened, and
Uh-huh.
was like, yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to hear. And I'm just like jaw on the floor because it was just, again, a reminder that like the creativity is fast with talented people. It doesn't take
Yes.
that much to unlock that concept of like, oh, sure, it's just like as if there was four of me. If there was four of me, this is what I would like.
Right.
And so I remembered like that was just one of those many instances where involving the musicians was such a benefit.
Absolutely. And just to add one more quick perspective to that, we need to remember that stereo is only a very minuscule of time that we've had music in. Music was always open and spatial, right? Around a fireplace in a venue in real life, right? Music was always spatial. It was only flat on the wall only for a few decades, if you will. So as far as musicians are concerned, I feel like that's their natural habitat, being in an open three-dimensional space where they can place things and do choirs and orchestras and bands, right? If you think about bands, that's how they would jam in a room, right? So this is amazing. It's giving me goosebumps that music is finally set free again into the 3D world, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I love stereo because I love music, and the majority of uh, music that's been recorded has happened to be recorded during a time where stereo is our primary medium. Um, I think for me as a composer and also as a producer, like it, it just it just unlocked something. It unlocked a potential that inspired me, and I'm very, very confident, beyond confident. Like I know that this parameter of space and spatiality is a part of a lot of musical creatives out there, and we
100%.
just need to be, continue to enable and help and support that creation.
Yes,
um, I'm inspired as a creator to create my own music, but I also, working with others to be there as, and I think there's probably lots of creatives on this call. There's probably lots of engineers on this call. I mean, as engineers, we're in a place just like when you're in the studio making a record in stereo. You're there to help facilitate the vision. And so if we can
exactly.
use this to help facilitate someone's vision, and spatiality is a part of what makes their music awesome, that's like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, you
Um,
inspired people already. I have Alphonse saying he wants to experiment with a choir, and Gordon said all those composers that created sounds inside the cathedrals, which is another great point. I argue that a church organ is possibly the world's oldest spatial instrument. If you think about it, the way I see it, the pipes are surrounding me, and that is the only instrument that I can walk into and experience music in, right?
it is, and it's not only is it the old. I mean, I'll give one other perspective for the oldest, the instrument part, but as an instrument, undoubtedly, and it's definitely the most epic. And when that instrument was designed, it wasn't designed to be recorded. It was designed to be experienced in that
Exactly.
cathedral.
Yes.
The idea
Immersed.
is, yeah, the idea is the audience, or the congregation, or whoever's coming to that thing, is going to experience it there and then. And the composers who are writing for it are writing for that space. The concept of recording and reproducing later is only 100 and plus years old. I mean, in terms of actual functional delivery of things that are sounding really good, we're still less than 100 years of really delivering, pretty high, like reasonable representations and kind of of a moment in time via sound. But the composers throughout time who are writing music for choirs, writing music for organs, for pipe organs, writing music for orchestra, that go back, and not just that. Think about African music. I've studied a lot of Afro-Cuban music, a lot of traditional Ghanaian music. There's a huge West African community here in Toronto. The music is performed in the round. The way that kalimba, this record opens up with kalimbas surrounding you. There's 15 different kalimba layers. Well, the way that it's traditionally played is in a circle. You're right, Tony. Like the very concept of, and the social aspect of how music is distributed is not foreign. It's just that I think at a very compositional level, because the medium of two-channel delivery has been the medium in which we can share it with people, we take it as a logical limitation. And as a composer, you say, great, well, I'm going to compose for something that's going to work. So as soon as we know, and as soon as we feel confident that the ability to share the art in another way is possible, it opens us up. The concert hall itself is a piece of technology. The piano is technology. The cathedral itself, the cathedral's technology. It's a the use of a human made thing that now facilitates music propagation. So yeah, I think we're at a time when it's not a better or worse. It's just that I think that there's a lot. The score is technology. I agree, Michael. I think that we're at a time when the palette is open. It's always been open, but I'm inspired to see what myself and all of us as a community are able to facilitate in terms of the future of where the creatives' minds go when we can help them to have space be a part of it.
Indeed, and as a company here at Sound Particles, and Juno can talk to this, our philosophy is to help creators like yourself and everyone in the chat with tools that are new. We try not to make another EQ or another compressor, right? Energy panel, density. These are ideas that Nuno had that does not have a competition or alternative. The idea here is not to compete for something, but to create tools that inspire artists like yourself and everyone else to create more things. So keep in mind, we are here. We always listen to you. We thrive on feedback. So we are here to assist. Nuno, if you want to add to that.
No, I would just add that the reward for us is to listen to Justin music uh, and others like Justin that create this fantastic thing. That's why we do what we do. We create the tools and the armor, the hammer, and then you create these fantastic sculptures. That for us, that's the reward. It's doing things and then seeing those things being used to create this fantastic piece of arts like Justin does. That is fantastic. I once again I have listened to a lot of sessions for Justin. It's always a pleasure. I would stay here for many hours, continue the conversation. But so Justin, once again, thank you very much for being able to join us in this.
I really appreciate it. And anyone feel free to reach out. You can find me. I haven't been able to kind of see who's on the chat exactly, other than those that I've kind of had a chance to quickly chat with, but I'm around. I'm happy. Thank you for listening to the record, those of you who have, and Tony and Nuno. I mean, this is the whole team. I mean, the immersive community as a whole. It's something that I love, and it's been such a pleasure. So hopefully we got to dive into some little avenues of this thing. This is the first time that I kind of really dove into specifically such a technological avenue, which I really love. And keep in touch. If there are any final questions, I'm not in necessarily a rush, but I also happy to
Yeah.
wrap it whenever makes sense.
I was about to say we tried to answer as many questions as we could, but if there's any that we did not answer, please email us. We will get to Justin, get them answered as soon as we can, and get back to you. But before that, Justin, a huge thank you from behalf of everyone at Sound Particles, everyone who joined. All good luck with the Grammy nomination.
Thank
We
you.
are rooting for you. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, the behind the scenes of this amazing record with us. Also, a shout out to our friends at Production Expert, and thank you so much, everyone. This has been amazing.